Good morning, friends. Up till now, we have discussed various operations which are involved in the industries. The industries may be a chemical engineering industry, that may be a mechanical engineering, that may be a engineering works industry, that may be a electrical oriented, electronic oriented, or some other types of industries. So whatever the operations, the processes, equipments, the steps which are involved in the industries are normally known to all the common people. But generally when the safety officers or the safety concerned people are talking, then they are talking about a specific operations. Normally, these specific operations are not known to the common people. And that is why the knowledge about the points about the safety measures, the precautionary measures, all these things are missing when a common people who is not knowing about these specific operations and their safety measures are working on these platforms. So from this picture, you can understand what exactly the specific operations are, or where the most of the hazards are present in these operations. So from the first picture, you can understand this is one of the confined space. There are lots of confined spaces. Confined spaces means where you are not comfortable with your work. So that may be due to the oxygen deficient atmosphere. That may be due to the some other gases are present in that atmosphere, in that working environment. That may be due to the high temperature or low temperature, or due to high humidity or some other reasons. So if you are not comfortable in that environment, then that environment is called as confined space. So the specific definition, the exact definition or the legal definitions are already defined in the respective laws and rules, but we are now talking about what exactly the scenario where we need a permit, because when we are entering into these confined spaces, we must know some of the parameters like oxygen level, that may be a working environment, that may be a temperature parameter, humidity parameters, or some other parameters. Then from the second photograph, you can understand this work is going on the roof. So on the roof, you have to take some precautionary measures. You have to check some points before starting these operations, and we have to support these people who are going to work on the roof by some equipments or the facilities like lifeline, safety harness, helmets, crawling boards, etc. Then from the third picture also, you can understand this is one of the other confined spaces, normally in the reactors, in the boilers, in the pressure vessels, when you are doing the repairing work or the maintenance work, or sometimes you have to work in the storage tanks that may be of fossil fuels or some other storage tanks. So for that purpose, you have to check first whether all these liquids or gases or vapors are present in that tanks or not. So for that purpose, you have to check these gases or vapors with the help of digital meters, so that we can understand whether all these vapors or gases are under or within the permissible limits or not, or is there any other issues in that tank. And if all these things are okay, then we can supply or support with some facilities that we have shown. You can understand from this picture that some supporting facilities are there, that may be a lifeline, that may be a airline respirators or torch, etc. Then from the fourth picture, you can understand when we are doing electrical work, especially when we are talking about the high voltage line work, then we must take some precautionary measures while doing these electrical work. That is, we have to find out the electrical hazards. We have to use some anti-static tools or anti-shocks, uh, personal protective equipments, etc. And then only we have to do these types of works. Then from the fifth picture, you can understand this is one of the hot work that may be a regular or routine operations in the forging operations or in the foundry operations or in the companies where steel is going to manufacture, or similar activities may be happen in that steel or steel aligned industries. So this may be a specific task for us, but that may be the routine for their workers who are doing the work in the steel or steel aligned industries. So we have to take care again for the temperature or the hot environment as a hazard. Then from the sixth picture, you can understand this excavation work is going on. So it is specifically done under the construction industries. So when we have to expand something or when we have to made or prepare something, then sometimes we need the excavation activity, and for excavation activity we have to again take some precautionary measures, because we are using the heavy machineries, we are doing the work at some feats, that is at depth, and for that purpose we have to take some precautionary measures. So if we are going to do all these types of work, then what exactly the process is? Who is going to do that work? Who is responsible for observations, supervisions, or for checking all these types of points, which is necessary or mandatory before starting these types of work? Then is there an exact format or a general format for these types of work for as a checklist? So the answer is a work permit system. And that is why we must know in industry, for sometimes we need work permit system for starting a specific or a hazardous operation, or it is also called as a dangerous operations. So in your industry also there may be dangerous operations which needs a work permit. So the objective of this work permit is, in a factory there are dangerous operations, dangerous equipments to life, and therefore well advanced precautions are necessary before their commencement and till the completions. So for precautionary measures, for reducing the risk to the life due to the dangerous operation or due to the dangerous equipment or due to the unsafe conditions or unsafe fact, we have to use this work permit. So there are different types of work permits are there. Hot work like welding and cutting operations, entering any confined vessel, working at height or on fragile roof, then opening of dangerous pipeline, electric work, handling dangerous chemicals are some of the examples. For the safety from such works, a work permit system is highly essential. So for these activities or the similar activities which may be called as dangerous operations or which can be a dangerous to the human being, then you must adopt the work permit system. So it requires the authorization be issued and obtained before any work is performed on the process. So there may be some authority, that may be a department head, that may be a manager, that may be an expertise person who is going to give a permission for doing this work. And before starting this work, the expert person is going to check the all conditions, whether these conditions are safe to work or not. Equipment or area and instruction content therein must be strictly followed by the permitted workers till the time limits. So in the previous slide, you understand the boiler, pressure vessels, or the reactors are the examples of equipments. So in some of the equipments, you may have to do the work like repairing, maintenance, or anti-corrosive painting, etc. So that may be one of the case for work permit. Then some area, so the area may be having some gases or vapors, which may be flammable gases, which may be explosive gases, or which may be a toxic gases in that environment. So for that area also, we have to use this work permit system, and we have to follow all the instruction which is given by that expert person or the competent person. So the work permit system should cover the different points like who requires a work permit. So example, contractors, subcontractors, subcontractors. So all types of workers which are under contractors or subcontractors must go for the work permit. Then the engineers who are going to do the repairing or maintenance work, the maintenance generally is having the mechanical maintenance or electrical maintenance work. Then the maintenance team under the electrical as well as mechanical, or there may be a central maintenance team who is going to work for a specific task. So all these peoples need a work permit for doing a particular task. What jobs require a work permit? So all maintenance work, tank cleaning, especially when I'm talking about these tanks, the historical data says that when we are cleaning the tanks which may contains fossil fuels or the gases or vapors which may be toxic in nature, which may be a poisonous in nature, or which may be oxygen substitute gases like nitrogens. So nitrogen is inert gas, but still when nitrogen is present in that tank, then oxygen is replaced by nitrogen. It means it create a oxygen deficient atmosphere. Suppose if the chlorine gas is there, it means the chlorine is a toxic and poisonous gas, which is also dangerous to life. If the hydrocarbon gases are there, that may be oil, that may be the gases like LPG, hydrogen, etc., then these gases are flammable or explosive in nature, and in case of any cutting, grinding, or welding operations, the explosion may be happen. So all these things should be keep in mind that we have to check these things with a proper tool and with a proper process only. Then some electrical inspections. So if there is a possibility of short circuit or there may be a chances of high voltage or low voltage, then if the high current is going to pass from some of the equipments or some of the lines, then we have to check all these things with the help of multimeter, that is digital multimeter, or some sophisticated equipments, so that we can minimize the risk to the human beings. Then what types of permits are available? So general work permit, that is for the general work, for work of a non-hazardous or cold work type. So for non-hazardous category work and for the cold work type, we can go for the general work permit systems. Then special work permit for work on live equipment or hot work. So that may be the case of furnace, that may be the case of forging operation, that may be a case of foundry operations, that may be a case of boiler walls, etc., or heat exchanger wall. So these are the examples of hot work systems. Or some live equipments means the equipment is running already as a production step, and still we have to use, we have to uh, utilize this equipment for a specific testing, for a specific inspection, or for specific repairing or replacement task. Then we have to use a special work permit system, because already these equipments or these lines are live. Then confined spaces. So we have already discussed about these confined spaces that may work involved, like working in a tanks, sewers, excavations where toxic or flammable vapors may be present, gas test certificates. This may form part of the above permits and specific what gas tests are necessary to the particular periods. So in some of the operations, we need a hydrogen test. In some of the operations, we need hydrogen sulfide test. In some of the operations, we need hydrocarbon test. In some of the operation, we need oxygen test with the help of dragger systems, etc. So depending on the situations, depending on the conditions, depending on the raw materials or the materials which are used in that operations in that factory, all these elements, all these components we have to check. And we must know about the material safety data sheet about these components so that we can take care about these components if it is present in a specific amount. Then electrical isolation certificates specified what electrical isolations are required and whether locks, that is LOTO systems, lockout tagout systems, which is already discussed in one of the video, then earthing and bonding systems, then notices are to be applied. So depending on the conditions again, for what time, what exactly the situation is, whether it is more hazardous situation, moderate hazardous situation, or low hazardous situation, depending on that we have to apply all these facilities. We have to notify these peoples who are surrounding to that particular area where this electrical type work is going on. So these are the different types of format. There are occasions when the work to be done requires all the above permits and certificates to be issued. So these are the different formats and certificates are to be issued to the person who is responsible for doing that repairing activity, maintenance activity, or some inspection work. Then who is responsible for issuing work permits? A list should be compiled by management authorities, specific persons to be responsible. Because before issuing these work permit systems, the person is who is going to issue this certificate must know about the environmental conditions, must know about the hazards. If the hazards are present, how to tackle the hazards in case of any incident or accident is happen while doing this work in that work permit systems, then how to handle the situation, what exactly the first aid process, or how to call the doctor, then ambulance, etc. All the things must be known to the person who is responsible for that work permit systems. And that is why management is the main authority who is going to give the responsibilities to a particular person for the work permit systems. Then arrangements for recording the issues. So if the responsible person is going to issue a work permit, then what exactly the work is, how much time it required, what exactly the date is, which type of instruments or tool they are needed for doing that work, then which type of test or inspection is needed in that work permit systems. All these should be recorded on paper, and then the responsible person should be sign on that document that I have checked personally all these things and everything is okay, and then he is going to issue that work permit system. Who issues and to whom? So we have already discussed that management is going to decide who is the responsible person to issue that work permit system. So that may be a supervisor, that may be a safety officer, that may be a responsible officer of the area and that equipment. So some persons are expertise in that particular area, some persons are expertise only in that particular equipment. Suppose a person is having 20 or more than 20 years experience in the boiler operations only, so while permission for the work permit, so that person who is having experience in that boiler operations is a responsible person to issue that work permit. Suppose utility manager is there and he is working since 20 plus years, then utility manager can give the work permit systems to the operations or the work which is related to the air compressor systems, that may be a water systems, that may be a steam, that may be some other works which may be called as utility. So depending on the conditions and area, depending on the industrial type, that may be a small scale, medium scale, or large scale. So the persons are the competent person in that area or for that operations or the equipment. It is generally issued in the name of supervisor or technician who has to carry out the required job under his direct supervisions. So supervisor has the knowledge about that area, about that operations, about the hazards which may be present in that area or with equipment or with that lines, and that is why supervisor must be there. Contents of the permits. So normally the general contents for the work permit systems or work permit formats are name of the supervisor, person to whom it is issued, workplace, equipment, name of the work to be carried out, date, time of start and completion. So it is a tentative completion time, that may be for 1 hour, 2 hour, or some minutes. Personal permitted or details of actions, conditions, equipment, procedure, and precautions from the authority who issues it. So these are the general contents. Depending on the again type of work systems, we have to add or specify some points in that work permit format. The format may be designed by the safety officer, the safety consultant, or an experienced engineer of the company. So that is depends on the conditions again. If the safety officer is having a sufficient or enough experience in that area, then he can go for the designing of these work permit systems and their contents. If it is not the case, then the safety consultant is going to finalize these work permit systems parameters. Most commonly used permits are fire or hot work permit, safe entry permit, that may be a vessel, then excavation permit, electrical work permit, chemical area work permit, high or height or depth permit, and so on. So we have to decide, we have to inspect, we have to observe the conditions in our premises, whether these types of work, maintenance work, repairing works, or some replacement substitution works, or some renovation or expansion work needed the work permit or not. And if the answer is yes, then we have to follow these practices. We have to finalize these work permit contents, and we have to identify the competent person or expert person for these types of work, and then supervisor must supervise these operations so that the work should be completed in a safer way. So there are some instructions for these types of work permits. Hazards of the plant, chemicals, and work should be explained to the works involved. So whatever the hazards present, say for example, I have discussed about the oil tanks. So oil tanks may be emptied by operator, but after emptied also it may contains hydrocarbon gases. So that is depends on the conditions, and that is why we have to identify these types of conditions or the hazards present at that time. Suppose if there is a chemical company which already having the different storage tanks of hydrogen, LPG, chlorine, benzene derivatives, etc. Then we have to identify these types of hazards, and all these hazards and their adverse effect should be explained to the worker who is going to work in that area. Then instruction should be in details and fully understood by both the parties. So who is going to explain about these hazards and their adverse impact on our health or on the human being or in that area, that should be explained in a clear way, and that should be understood by the worker who is going to work in that area. So work area should be clearly identified, made safe, or the hazards highlighted. So whatever the hazards present, that may be a overhead line, that may be a high voltage line, that may be some unsafe conditions, that may be some oils or some chemicals which are available in that area, or some other conditions. So whatever the conditions may be, so that should be identified first, and then that should be displayed in that area. Then in charge of the area who issues the permit should be competent and responsible and should sign the document. So before starting the work, the responsible person is going to check all these types of hazards, all the instruments or the appropriate tools are going to use by that worker. And then he is going to sign that document that he is satisfied regarding the necessary isolation, blanketing, etc., because some areas are needed these types of blanketing or isolation. Suppose some electrical panels are there, or some electrical controls are there, or some flammable gases storage are there, or some cylinders are also present in that area. Then we have to isolate that area from the working environment. Or sometimes if the vessels or the reactors are involved in the working conditions, then we have to use the blanketing. Blanketing means that metal piece should be added to the pipeline in that flange so that 100% gases which may enter or the liquids which may enter into the pipeline should be stopped. Only closing the wall is not the sufficient condition for the blanketing. So in that blanketing we have to add the metal piece so that there are 0% chances to add these gases into that area, and we can avoid the accidents and we can reduce the risk. So there are various operations like these isolations and blanketing. So we have to take care about these activities before starting the actual operation. The in charge of the team of workers who receives a permit must sign the permit stating that he has fully understood the work to be carried out. So both the parties are very important. Who is going to issue that permit and who is receiving that permit. So the person who is going to receive that permit, who is the leader of that team, that he should also sign a paper where he clearly mentioned that he fully understood the work to be carried out, the hazard potential, the precautionary measures, the conditions and the procedures, and the personal protective equipment or firefighting equipment to be utilized. So for example, if the confined space entry is there, so if the persons are going to enter into the pressure vessel, into the boiler, into the reactor, or into the tunnel, or into the pipeline where the diameter of that pipeline is less, or in the underground work, for the underground work, or working at height, whatever it may be. So if that is the case, then we have to select a specific type of personal protective equipment or a specific type of firefighting equipments. So all these things should be understood by that person who is going to sign that work permit. Any monitoring including gas testing required before, during, after the work should be specified, and the results should be noted on that document. So before the operation starting, during the operation and after the operations, that should be done. So that monitoring, so monitoring mainly when we are talking about the gases which may be present in that area, because generally when we are talking about the oil tank, then normally we think that only oil is present in the tank, but actually with the oil some gases or vapors are also contaminated in that tanks, and that may be trapped into the walls of that oil tank, and that is why we have to test these types of gases. So that may be the for before or during or after testing also, to minimize the hazards. Then when the work is completed, after necessary extension of the permit of work continues, the work in charge signs off the permit stating that the specified work has been completed. So sometimes it happens that when the work system, work permit system is signed by both the parties, then that is decided that this work can be completed within 1 hour. But when the actual work is going on, some elemental problems are there, and that is why that 1 hour may be extended to 1.5 or 2 hour. So that also needed permission from the person who is responsible to issue that work permit. So if the permission is granted, then after necessary extension, we have to continue that work, and after completion that work again, then both the parties should be satisfied that all the conditions are safe for the routine work or the regular work, so that we can start our routine operations. Then the area in charge signs to accept the work has been completed, and he now accepts the responsibility. So that is the main part. So before accepting these things, again the responsible person who is the issuer of these work permit systems has to check all the necessary conditions. So this is the general sample of the work permit systems. The contents of these work permit systems are work order number, location, then work permit number, issue date, then the subcontractor, area of work, work starting date, time, work ending date, time, then the description of the work equipment, subcontractor receiving authority, subcontractor performing authority, date and time. So all these contents to be filled by the subcontractor. So the signing person is responsible to ensure the work is performed under all mentioned and required safety precautions. So failure on this will be subject to the disciplinary action. So these are the things to be filled by the subcontractor. Then the things which is to be filled by the contractor. Individual protection equipments. So whatever the necessary equipment, and that should be carried by that workers, and that should be hand over to the contractor, and then contractor will be hand over to the subcontractor and the actual person or the worker who is going to handle these situations. So that may be the helmet, that may be the welder's helmet, welder's apron, then work clothes, then dust mask, ear protectors, emergency respirators, protective goggles, safety belts, gas mask, safety shoes, anti-dust overalls or dielectric boots, dielectric gloves, rubber safety boots, welders breeches, safety harness, safety gloves, safety glasses, H2S mask, double safety harness, etc. So there are some gases which are specifically mentioned in the work permit, and why these are mentioned, because the historical data or the accident data or statistical data clearly mentions that due to these gases the most of the fatalities are done. For example, here clearly mentioned that hydrogen sulfide. So why this H2S gas is clearly mentioned? Because when we are doing the work underground or when we are doing the work in the tanks, then there are chances of presence of this H2S gas, and it is a toxic gas. So if H2S is present, it means there is a deficiency of oxygen level, and due to the deficiency of oxygen level, there may be the chances of suffocation, there may be chances of fatalities. So we have to take care about these gases, and especially the gases which are colorless and odorless. Then common protection equipment, other safety measures, contractor issuing authority, is electrical permit to work required, yes or no? If it is yes, then what is the number of that permit to work? Then is confined space permit to work required? If yes or no, if yes is there, then number. In case electrical or confined space permit to work is required, yes or no, and if yes, then attach the copy of the same. Then site preparation, completion and work can commence. Contractor operating authority. I understand the precautions to be taken as described above. Subcontractor operating authority. So before signing these things, that contractor, subcontractor should understand what exactly it is written here, what exactly we have to do, and whether all these tools, equipments, PPs, FEs are available or not. The work is completed and work area is clear, so it is nothing but the closure of these work permits. So after an hour or after 2 hours, whatever the time mentioned for that work permit system, if the work is completed, then we have to clearly mention this, the work is completed and working area is clear. So that is sign of subcontractor performing authority. And again, the site has been checked and working area is accepted, that is the sign of contractor operating authority. So if the subcontractor is saying that the work is completed and the working area is safe now, but that is should be checked by the contractor, and if in case any deficiency is there, any loopholes is there, then that point should be clear by the subcontractor, and the guidelines or the direction should be given by the contractor itself. After clearing and after satisfying the condition only, the contractor is going to sign this document and declare that the work permit is closed. So this is the general work permit and their parameters. Now we have to talk about the specific work permit. One of the specific work permit is hot work permit. So for welding and cutting operations, working with the open flames or sparks due to grinding, chiseling, etc., there are various activities which involves a hot work, high temperature work, and that is why we have to go for the hot work permit systems. So due to this hot work, there may be a chances of fire. Due to this hot work, due to the high temperature, there may be a danger to the human being also. Then hot work or fire permit is necessary for such type of work. The precautionary measures are: the area must be made free from hazards of fire and explosions. So that is the main and basic case, because we know that when there is a hot work, when there is a high temperature, then there are chances of fire and chances of explosion. Test and explosive air mixture or possibility should be carried out. So for fire triangle, fire tetrahedron, we must know that whether the air is present, whether the oxygen is present in that area, and if it is present in the proportion, and if it is going to support to the fire, then we have to test that particular air mixture or explosive air mixture, because there are two limits, that is lower explosive limit and upper explosive limit in case of explosion hazards. And if the explosion air mixture is going to cross this lower explosive limit, then we have to take some precautionary measures to reduce the explosion hazard or to avoid the explosion. All lines to the vessel shall be blinded or disconnected. So we have already talked about this blanketing, we have already talked about this blinding, disconnecting. So disconnecting may be the wall closing activity, that may be a metal piece adding in the pipeline activity or some other case. But we have to isolate these hot work with other normal work. Then sufficient vents and flame-proof light shall be provided. So light or ventilations and illumination systems should be sufficient for doing the work in a comfortable way, and that is why this flame-proof light should be provided. Then venting system means the sufficient air should be provided in that area for doing the work in a comfortable way. The fire protection and alarm shall be kept ready. Dangerous work shall not be allowed in the vicinity, and water facilities shall be used to extinguish sparks, hot slugs, etc. So the main things or the main hazards are fire and explosion, and that is why we can understand, we can think in a logical way that for reducing this fire and explosion hazard, what should be the precautionary measures. And now you can understand why these precautionary measures are there for the hot work permit systems. So this is the example of hot work permit systems. So you can read the contents. There are different hot work permit system format from the different companies. So depending on the conditions, depending on the operations which are involved in your company, you can modify, you can rectify, you can change the hot work permit systems. So before initiating hot work, can this job avoided? Is there a safe way? This hot work permit is required for any temporary operation involving open flames or producing heat or sparks. These includes but is not limited to brazing, grinding, soldering, throttling pipe, torch, applied roofing, welding. The instructions for this work is verify the precautions listed below or not proceed with the work. Complete this permit and issue to the persons performing the work. Retain this copy in the project file. So whatever the work you are going to do, there are two parties, that is issuing authority and receiving authority. So issuing authority is going to explain all the things related to the work, that may be the hazards, that may be the tools used, that may be the PPs, FEs, etc. And the receiving authority must understand all these things and instruction, and that should be followed by that contractor or the subcontractor. Then the permit, date, shift, work order, location of work, equipment number, purpose of work, name of the person doing the work, name of the fire watch persons. I verify the above location has been examined, the precautions check and the precaution checklist below to minimize this chance of fire. So in the hot work permit systems, we already discussed about that fire and explosion. These are the main two hazards, and that is why we have to take care about these fire hazards. So this is the declaration by the supervisor, and that is why the supervisor's name, signature, duration, start time and stop time are should be mentioned. Then the hot work permits may not be authorized for more than one shift. So the questionnaire is for these things are water hoses or fire extinguishers available and in good repair? Is hot work equipment in good repair? Have flammable liquids, dust, lint and oily deposits within 35 feet been removed? Have explosive atmosphere been eliminated? And write down the test result. Has the work surface area been clean of greases, paints, etc.? Why these are the requirement? Because all these things are helping for the fire hazards. They are the supporting points, supporting elements, supporting chemicals to support for the fire or the fire environment. And that is why that should be clean. Have combustible floors been weighed down, covered with the damp, sand or covered with the fire resistant sheets? Have surface area below work area been protected? Have access ways below work area been barricaded? Are UV shields in place? Has enclosed equipment been cleaned of all combustibles? Have all containers been purged or flammable liquids and vapors? will fire watch to provided during and fire 60 minutes after the work, including the coffee and lunch breaks. Has fire watch been provided with the suitable fire extinguishing devices? Has the fire watch persons been trained in use of fire extinguishing devices and in sounding alarm or the emergency communications? Has additional fire watch been assigned to adjoining areas above and below? Hot work area will be monitored for 4 hours after completion of this work. And if again you have to add some other things or questionnaires, then you can add in the other areas. So these are the basic guidelines, and you can understand that we have to avoid, we have to minimize the fire and explosion risk or hazards. And for that purpose, the fire watch person is the key person who is going to observe all these necessary things to avoid the fire or the explosions. This is the another hot work permit. You can understand that there are various parameters, that is depending on the type of work, type of company, and type of hazards which are available in that area. So the hot permit may be like this. So permit to work, reference number, project name, starting from date and time, contractor, number of employees involved, expected completions, date and time, that is tentative time to complete this activity. Then whether this activity is like welding activity, or it may be a brazing, it may be cutting, grinding, soldering, etc. So all these are the examples of hot work. Then work description, location of job to be performed, tools, equipments to be used, identify the risk associated with this hot work. That may be a electrocution, that may be a falling object, that may be a fire spark, that may be a health hazard, that may be a arc flash, that may be a protruding objects parts, manual handling, or smoke, fumes, flying particles, stripping, slipping, hot burn, noise, electrical shock, explosion, or some other hazards. So whatever the hazards are present, that depends and that gives the idea regarding the risk. So the risk may be a low, moderate, or high risk level, and that should be mentioned in this work permit area. The following documents must be attached with these permits. That may be a method statement, risk assessment, or some others. Precautionary measures are like, are you certified to undertake this work? Is equipment machine inspected and color coding available of the current month? Are all combustible materials removed or shipped from the sparks? Are the hoses inspected, free from greases or oils, cut or crack, fitting special clips? Are the regular and gauges inspected? Defects broken, fitting, calibration, oxygen release not exceed 50 psi, then acetylene release not exceed 15 psi, etc. So these are the different parameters may be involved in your work permit systems. So oxy cylinder or acetylene cylinder may be used for this work, and that is why this oxygen level as well as the acetylene level with respect to that pressure is also mentioned. Then are flashback arresters are provided? Are the cylinders provided with cap, trolley, chain, appropriate relief valve? Are emergency team available in that place? If yes, then what are the contact numbers of that emergency team? Have tools and devices to be used, been tested and adjusted? Then if other parameters are there, or the questionnaires are there, or the cross check list is there, then you can write in that, specify that area. The following areas items have been inspected by the issuer and receiver. So that is the fire extinguisher, then fire canopy, fire watcher, fire blanket, then danger or warning signs, then fume, extractor, ventilation, sand bucket, lighting systems or friction light, safety barriers, containers, rods. Then regarding the PP, that may be the helmet, welding goggles, welding shield, safety shoes, apron for the welding, then welding clothes, welding gloves, gas mask, face shield, earplugs or muffs, or if other PP is there that should be utilized or used by that worker, then that should be mentioned in the other area. So issue and acceptance before the work. So that is also mentioned in this work permit systems. So acceptance of work permission by the person in charge, that is the receiver, and this is the declarations, all that all the work is completed and the work area is safe. So that permit receiver's names and signature with date and time. Then authority to proceed by the authorized person, that is issuer. So he is again going to check whether the condition is safe or not, whether the work is completed in a safer way or not. So again, the name, the signature, date and time, then acknowledge by the contractor, safety engineer and officers and their signs, then verification by SEC consultant, or clearance and cancellation after work, or suspension of permits. Suppose if some contractor or consultant, observer or fire watch person or supervisor, whoever may be, if finds that this work is going in an unsafe way or some unsafe conditions are created while doing this work or repairing, maintenance or hot work permit, then he can directly ask to stop this work to reduce this hazard, and that is nothing but the cancellations of that work or suspension of that work. So that may be the case. So depending on that condition, you can ask to cancel, you can ask to suspend, or if the work is completed, then you can ask to clear or closure of this work permit. So site engineer, site manager may be the responsible person who is going to verify again the conditions which are created after the completion of this work. And in case of suspension, who is going to suspend this activity? Their name, sign, and date should be mentioned. So depending on the cases, we have to fill these hot work permit forms or the systems. So these are the samples. So another special works permit system is electrical work permits. So the main reference for this electrical work and their safety procedures and practices is IS 5216 part 1. So before issuing the permit, it is ensured that the apparatus is concerned is made dead, earth and isolated from the live conductor by opening all relevant switches, circuit breakers, fuses, isolators, etc. So we have to take care about the electrical hazards now. That may be the current issue, that may be the voltage issue, that may be the resistance issue, that may be the leakage or wire leak issue or some other issues. So everything should be checked from the electrical point of view. He who receives the permit also recheck the and to ensure that there is no possibility of the accidental power supply. Then only he starts the work, because these are the cases which already have happened, and in case of electrical shocks, in case of electrical work, there are chances of fatalities. In case when the work is continue in the next shift, the permit is transferred to the other person for the next shift. On completion of the job and before returning the permit of cancellation, it is verified that the persons of the apparatus are withdrawn and temporary earth connectors are removed. Now when we are talking about the hot work permit, then the competent person, the expert person is different one, because the person who is going to issue that work permit, who is going to verify that work permit, who is going to verify the conditions after the work completion of hot work permit are different work, because they are expertise in that area only. When we are talking about the electrical work permit, then the person who is having the experience, having the knowledge, having the practices in the electrical work are the only person who is going to issue these electrical work permits. So these are not the common person who are always going to permit these systems or the work permit systems for all the cases. So the permit issuing authority rechecks the apparatus, cancels the permit, and energize the apparatus by closing all switches, fuses, breakers, isolators. And what I'm saying, that is the case that we must know, we must have the knowledge about these fuses, then breakers, that may be the circuit breaker, then oil circuit breaker, low circuit breaker, air circuit breakers, etc. So all these isolators, now These are the isolators for the electrical supply. And what we have discussed in the previous slides, that isolators are the physical isolators for cutting off the supply of chemical, cutting off the supply of the liquid or gases. Then similarly, work permits can be prepared for the other types of hazardous work, keeping their special precautionary measures in the mind. It is advisable to use the separate permits for separate works instead of using a common form for different works. So whatever I have discussed, that hot work permit systems are having a different hazards, and from that point of view, the questionnaire or the checklist is different one. And the expert persons, the contractor, subcontractor, worker, are also different one. When we are talking about the electrical work, then again the hazards are different. The tools, equipments, personal protective equipment, firefighting equipments, precautionary measures, isolation techniques, etc. are different one. And that is why this work permit format should be separate from the common one. And that is the suggestions, that we must have the different work permits formats for the different work. So operating staff must also have a valid work permit for operating jobs which may have a hazardous content, such as opening a pressurized system, such as product filter, pipeline, removing pyrophoric catalyst, working at height, etc. So this is the electrical isolation test, one of the activity to isolate the work which is going to done or which needs the work permit. So there is a test, that is direct current resistance test, is performed between the sub-circuit common and subsystem chassis to verify that a specified level of isolation resistance is made. So normally when we are talking about the Electricity Act, electricity rule, etc., they are having less than 1 ohm resistance, and in this test we are going to test these resistances itself, so that we can have the idea that we can work on this platform in a safer way. So this isolation testing may be also be conducted for one or more electrical circuits for the systems or subsystems. The test often reveals the problems that occur during the assembly, such as defective or wrong component, improper component placement, orientation, wire insulations, insulator defects that may cause inadvertent shorting or grounding to chassis. Isolation resistance measurements may be achieved using a high input impedance ohm meter, digital multimeter, that is the common device which is used by all types of electrical maintenance people. And or current limited hypot test instruments may be used. Then selected equipment should not overstress sensitive electronic components comprising the subsystems. The test limit should also consider the semiconductor components within the subsystems that may be activated by the potentials imposed by each type of test instruments. So depending on the condition, again we have to appropriately select the testing instrument, testing tool, testing equipments, and nowadays we are using only the digital equipments for the accuracy and for the precision. So in the industries also we are using these types of equipment, and we may have the idea regarding the resistances, regarding the current, regarding the voltage, etc. Because normally when we are talking about the fire hazards, fire accidents, you may heard about the fire hazards in news, and generally when they are talking about the causes or the reasons for the fire hazards, so the main or the common reason is short circuit. The short circuit is one of the reason for fire incidences, and that is why we must take care about these electrical circuits or electrical installations. Yesterday also we heard about the fire hazards in the hospital, where the 6 fatalities were there, and there were many incidences where the fire hazards happen and the output is fatalities, and the reasons are short circuits. and that is why we must take care about these electrical work permit systems, and for that purpose the expert person should be present there to observe, to supervise these types of work. A minimum acceptable resistance value is specified, typically in the mega ohm or range per circuit tested. Multiple circuits having a common return may be tested simultaneously, provide the minimum allowable resistance. So all these numbers are clearly mentioned in the IS standard procedures, in the Electricity Act and rule, in the OSHA's rule, or in the state government rules, etc. So the 5 basic isolation test configurations exist, that are single unreferenced end circuit, then multiple unreferenced end circuits with a single return, then subsystems with isolated common, then common chassis ground, and isolated circuit common. So these are the different tests, that is isolation test configurations, where you can understand what exactly the circuit input signal and the output signals. So we have to check, we have to test all these types of circuits with the help of these types of test. So there are several tests are available. These are the common one in the electrical work permits. So this is one of the format for the electrical work permit systems. So that is uh, divided into different parts. So part 1 is to be completed by the requester. So the date, building, room, equipment, ID, circuit, panel, etc. or description of work, location, description of work to be done, justification why circuits, equipments can't be turned off, or the critical equipments, etc. should be mentioned by the requester. So what exactly the type of work is there, which type of equipments you are going to repair or replace, etc. If there is a need of isolation, but there is no chance or feasibility for offing all the equipment, then why you are not going to turn off these equipments or circuits, that should be mentioned with the justifications or the reasons. Then part 2 is related to the to be completed by the electrical safety officers. So electrical safety officers concurrence for the working energized, if yes, then proceed for the part 3, otherwise if it is no, return to the requester. So if this is the case, then the name of that electrical safety officer should be mentioned with the date, sign and signature. If the part 2 answer is yes, then the part 3 is to be completed by the electrically qualified persons doing this work. Then they have to go for these questionnaires. So voltage rating of the equipment, if it is 120 volt or 208 volt, then this symbol should be checked. See, the box should be checked. If it is not the case, then you can go for all others options. So that may be the 35 kV or 50 kV plus. Then detailed job description, procedures to be performing about the work, description of the safe work practices to be employed, results of the shock hazards analysis, determination of the shock protection boundaries, results of the flash hazards analysis, determination of the flash protection boundaries, identify the personal protective equipment, that is PP, and the other safety perform of the assigned task, then some means employed to the restrict the across or access of unqualified persons from the work area. So only the qualified, experienced and knowledgeable persons in that electrical works are allowed, only other persons are not allowed in that area. So that is clearly mentioned in the part 3, and whatever the evidences of completion of this job should be mentioned here, whether all the conditions are okay or not. If it is yes, then that should be clearly mentioned by that electrical safety officers with date and sign and time. Then part 4 is final approval to perform the work while electrically energized. So before starting, before utilizing this electrical energy or starting this energy, we have to check again, and the person who is qualified in this area and responsible for that area should check all these electrical parameter before starting these uh, equipments or the operations. And then if it is yes, the conditions are okay, then the signed date and time should be mentioned by that persons. So these are the examples or the sample electrical work permit systems. Now we already discussed about these confined spaces. So in some of the state rules, the confined spaces are defined, and the general definition also we know that if you are not comfortable with the work environment and still you have to carry that work, then that space or the environment is called as confined workspace, and that is the simple definitions. So normally the examples of these confined spaces are limited opening for entry and exit. So if the diameter of that pipe, diameter of that manhole, diameter of that underground pipeline, diameter of that pressure vessel entry, etc., are limited, then that is the confined space. Unfavorable natural ventilation. So if the sufficient air supply or oxygen is not present in that area, then it is a confined space. So generally, when we are talking about legal references, OSHA references, then if the oxygen level is less than 29.3, that is the uncomfortable case. But when we are talking about the less than 19.5 case, then oxygen supply or air respiratory is necessary for that case, and that is the case of confined space. Even though the oxygen is at higher level, that is called as oxygen rich level, then that condition is also a confined space or hazardous place, because reaching or having more oxygen in that environment, that may be the support to the fire hazards. So we have to check the oxygen level with the help of tracker instruments, and then if the oxygen level is sufficient, then only you have to permit these workers to uh, doing that work. Not designated for continuous work occupancy. If the routine process or routine work is not there, then you have to go for the work permit systems. Confined space is also classified as has vertical or maze exit, or contains loose dust, fluidized materials, or unstable solids. So depending on the conditions also, these confined spaces are classified. It is not a normal place for working. That is the main condition. So if you are not feeling comfortable in that work area or that space is called as confined space, and then we have to use the guidelines or instruction given by the expert person. So what are the risks involved in these confined spaces while working? The possibility of toxic gases or dust, oxygen deficient atmosphere, fire, explosion, high temperature, sudden flow or pressure. Examples of these confined spaces are tanks, pit, sump, vat, duct, gutter, tunnel, sewer, drain, trench, pipe, reaction vessel, boiler, chimney, flue, furnace, oven, ceiling voids, enclosed room, basements, etc. So these are the different examples of the confined spaces. So proper safety work permit, workplace monitoring systems, then self-breathing operators, safety belt, safety harness systems, crawling boards, etc. should be used while doing these types of work in the confined spaces. So we have to take care, we have to follow some safety measures, some precautionary measures before starting this work in the confined spaces. This is the example or sample of formats for the work permit systems. So authorized entrance, who is going to enter into that area, that is authorized entrants and authorized attendants. Then permit authorization, I certified that all actions and conditions necessary for the safe entry have been performed. So name of that person's, then signature, date and time. Entry procedure checklist. So we have to complete all these types of steps. Step 1, obtain a permit confined space entry form from the program coordinator. Then step 2 is notify the supervisor before the confined space entry. Then step 3 is confined space matter has been calibrated and it is in working order. Then complete the top portion of the permit confined space entry form. Then the next one is ensure all rescue equipments, that may be a tripod stand, that may be a body belt, that may be a lanyard, is in place prior to the entry. So there may be a emergency team or a rescue team which should be present in that work area where you are going to perform. That may be a tunnel, that may be a pipeline, that may be an underground working area, that may be a storage tank, etc. So at that place, the emergency or rescue team should be there. If you are working in the area where there is no ladder available, then we have to use this tripod sign as a stand, and with the help of that wires, ropes, safety harness, hard hats, helmet systems, we have to use these instructions from that rescue team. Then next step is that monitor the confined space, whether the gases are present or not. So we have to check the gases which may be the possibility in that area. So that may be the H2S gas, that may be the oxygen gas, that may be the hydrogen gas, that may be some other gases. So depending on the condition, we have to check the gases with the help of gas detector systems. And again, that monitoring, after monitoring the gas detections, gas levels, we have to check again, and after verification only we can enter the confined space, after completion of this verifying the gases level in that area. So we have to maintain the constant communication with the entrant until the entrant has exited the confined space. So that communication may be a oral communication, that may be with the help of walkie-talkie, that may be with the help of some other communicating media. But we are not going to use mobile phones, because these mobile phones are having some charge, because we are using these electromagnetic waves for communication systems with the mobiles, and that electromagnetic waves maybe acts as a sparking media for the hydrocarbon gases. So we are not going to use this mobile where there is a possibility of hydrocarbon or flammable gases. Then the attendant should contact supervisor once the entrant has exited and the confined space. So the permit confined space entry form should be given to the program coordinator, and that should be signed by that person who has completed that activity in a safer way. So this is the another form which can be the simple form as compared to the previous one. So that may be clearly mentioned the location, ID number or description. Then the purpose of entry, time in, time out, supervisor's name, sign date, permit cancel time, reasons permit cancels, and then some check parameters. So these parameters may be the oxygen deficiency level, combustion gas, vapor, combustible dust, carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide, toxic gas or vapor, toxic fumes, skin chemical hazards, electrical hazards, mechanical hazards, then engulfment hazards, then entrapment hazards, thermal hazards, slip or fall hazards, then hot permit required or not, then LOTO system is required or not, then lines broken, capped or blank or not, then purge, flash or vent, then secure area, post and flag, ventilations and other. So we have to check all these things, whether the oxygen deficiency level is correct or it is reacher or whether it is lean. So depending on the case, we have to take yes or no, and if you have to specify something, then you can add some words in the communication procedures also. So some special equipments are also have to be checked, whether the SCBA, that is self-contained breathing apparatus, is useful for this work environment or not. An escape harness is required or not. Tripod emergency escape unit is required or not. Lifelines is required or not. Lighting, explosive proof or low voltage lines. Normally we are talking about the less than 24 voltage lights are permissible for this area. Then PP like goggles, gloves, clothing, etc. and fire extinguishing systems are available or not, or you are going to require for this work permit or not. Then do not enter if permissible entry levels are exceeded. So I have already discussed about these oxygen level. So if it is less than 19.5, this is oxygen deficient atmosphere. So it is dangerous to your health. If it is richer than 23.5%, then it is oxygen rich level, which is again hazardous from the fire and explosion hazard point of view. Then the lower explosive limit less than 10%, then it is okay condition. If it is carbon monoxide is present in that area, but if the level is less than 35 ppm for 8 hours, that is time weighted average, then it is okay, otherwise the work is not permitted by that person. Then H2S, what I have talking about in the previous work permit systems, that is hydrogen sulfide, 10 ppm maximum permissible limit for 8 hours. So depending on the conditions, depending on the oxygen level, LEL, carbon monoxide, H2S, etc., or if any gases can be present, may be present in that work area, so we have to mention the maximum permissible limit for that gas. Then the name of the person who is going to test these gases, then the test instruments which is used by the person, the model number, serial number, date, etc., and the calibration date should be mentioned in that area. So all these things are required in the confined space entry permit, and these things, these checklist, this parameter may be changed depending on your working condition in your industry. Then the next one is excavations. We all know that excavation is nothing but the construction activities, which is a required one where the construction is at the initial level. So it may be with or without the dewatering sites. So out of many methods, the suitable excavation should be selected. There are various methods also available in the excavations. So general precautions for the excavation activities or underground work are survey of hazards of fall of persons, soil, materials. So the strength of that soil, strength of that material, strength of that land is the main observations. Then inrush of water, oil or gases. What are the chances of these water, oil or gases enter into that excavation area? Then adequate lighting, ventilation to supply fresh air inside, then controlling gas, vapor, dust, etc. within safe limits, then fire precautions, safety means of access, stability of the ground, position of public utility services such as electric or telephone cables, water, gas or sewer lines, etc. So all these lines should be checked because these are the excavation activities, and many of the lines are underground lines, especially when we are talking about these water, LPG or gas lines. Then effect on adjoining this building, structure, roadways, bridges, etc. A competent person should make this survey and give permission to the work. Chemical waste and contamination should be safely removed. So no load, vehicle or material should be moved or stacked near the edge of excavation unless shoring or piling is done to prevent the sites of the collapsing. So we have to take care about all these hazards which may be present in that area or nearby area, and stability of the ground is one of the major concern. Then some chemicals lines or some sewer lines and some overhead lines is another concerns, and some chemical component may be uh, available in that area or after digging that land, so some gases may be created in that area. So depending on the conditions, we have to take care about this excavation, and we have to obey some of the instructions from the competent persons. So all support work such as props, wages, etc. should be regularly checked for deflection or distortion. All sides should be fenced by barrier because this excavation activity is going on. Then other than the expert persons or the persons who are allowed for this activity, other persons are not allowed in that area to avoid the danger. So we have to display some danger notices also in that area. The sides of all excavation must be sloped to a safe angle, not steeper than the angle of repose of a particular soil. So we have to avoid these sleeping activities. That may be a sleeping of man, that may be a sleeping or slipping of the heavy equipments. Then cutting shall be done from the top to bottom. No undercutting of side shall be allowed. So in narrow trenches, a ladder should be extended from bottom to top and 1 meter above the ground surface. So erosion of soil, over excavated pits, trenches should be prevented from running water by dewatering pumps. Road barrier at a distance should be provided if road is to be blocked. Helmets and gumboots should be given to all workers working inside. Vehicle must be checked for warning sirens, horns, lights, signals, reverse alarm, etc. Rules of driving should be enforced. Sufficient lighting should be provided for night work. So these are the various guidelines for the excavation activity. So this is the example of the work permit system for the excavation activity. So generally the points are, so these are the common points: date, time, etc., then permit number, then work location, and now the safety considerations. So you can observe now the safety consideration or safety checklist is different, that is the parameters are different in the different work permit systems. For the work permit systems, for the excavation activity, the hydraulic shoring, water removal equipment, shoring box, barricades, traffic control, access or exit, shielding, sloping, then check area underground running, then buried electrical line identified, confined space entry required, competent person on site, safety harness, then ladders, spoil pile equipment 3 feet away from the excavation. Then additional safety consideration in the depth or slope ratio should be also mentioned in the work permit. Then I have personally inspected and job, that is nothing but the declarations by that person. So there may be a group or work representative, a safety representative, engineering representative, owning area representative, competent person, and registered professional engineer as required. So that may be the depending on the case to case. So we have to follow these types of instruction before starting any type of excavation activity. So this is another format for this excavation activity: subcontractor, contractor, and owner. So again, so this area can be filled by the subcontractor, like the name of contractor, subcontractor, date, time, area of work, working date, excavation by hand, equipment or other work equipment. Then subcontractor or shall provide along the excavation permit to work systems, and then again the sign authority, date and time. Then the points to be filled by the contractors are safety precautions, that may be watchman, flagman, safety signs, warning tape, permanent barricades, then spoil clearance, PPE, others, etc. So whether all these facilities are present in that area or not, that should be checked and that should be ticked as yes or no. Then civil department should be check these some of the activities, and then electrical department, EHS department, mechanical department, instrument department, and some other expert person should also check the facilities. Then is the banksman required for full time during excavation? Are hard barricades required for to protect the excavation? Because these are the things which is depending on your condition, depending on your work. Suppose if the work is for 30 days, 40 days, 50 days, etc., then you can go for the permanent barricades, hard barricades. If it is for some minutes, for some hours, then you can go for the temporary barricades. So depending on the conditions, again we have to change these formats, or we have to tick the appropriate points or the questionnaires, and then approval by the superintendent or the construction manager or delegates. So these are some of the guidelines for the parameters which can be involved in the excavation permit systems. And then the another special work permit system is for the working on roofs. So we have already discussed these things in one of the video in working at height. So I will go through for the points that accidents occur due to the fall through fragile roof sheeting, loss of balance, then insufficient care while working at the edge of the roof. These are the main causes of accidents where the working of worker on the roofs or at the height. So we have to uh, take care about some of the appropriate safety measures like crawling board, then walk boards, railing, safety belt, safety net systems, etc. And the basic condition is that when you are going to work on a fragile roof at a height more than 6 feet, then you are not going to permit on a routine basis. So you have to go for the work permit systems when you are working more than the 2 meter or the 6 feet. The sound platform, adequate support or safety net should be provided. The roof work should be pre-planned and only fit, and skilled workers should be employed. So some tests are also there, some psychological tests as well as some medical testings are also available before going for the work on a roof. So some workers may have the phobia for the height, and that is why these workers should be avoided. So fixed or mobile scaffold, then flat ladders, roofers ladder, sufficient cat ladders, crawling boards, safety belts, safety nets are the equipments which can be used while working on the roofs. Then anchor points, anchor hooks, bars, wire ropes or other fixing devices should be decided. These arrangements must be made first, and then only the work may be started under strict supervision. So these are some of the basic guidelines before working on the roof. So worker should be trained, medical examination should be done, walk boards and equipment should be carried by that worker before starting. So falls through fragile roofing materials, the best way to prevent fall through such fragile material is to use cat or roof ladders. They should be at least 38 centimeter wide and should have cross battens at least 3.2 centimeter thick, fixed not more than 38 centimeter apart. So these are the specific guidelines for the roof ladders or crawling boards. Then safety belts and fall arrestor nets should be used. Reinforced AC sheets are now available in the markets. So there are some specific guidelines for standard railings and toe boards also, that should be having a barrier, complete barrier to minimum height of 90 centimeters should be provided. And a sloping roof, the barrier may be in the form of scaffold boards extending to a minimum height of 40 centimeter above, and the roof surface and the ground rail at height more than 90 centimeter but not more than 120 centimeters. So there are different guidelines given in different rules and regulations, and especially when we are talking about these things. So national building code is also there when we are talking about the building of building construction, where you are going to refer the building and other construction workers act and rule, then you may find the more details about this working on roof, because these are the construction activity, expansion activity, or the replacement activities of the roofs. That may be a fragile roof case. So these are the parameters which may be involved in that working on roof or work at height. So this is the um, system where you can adopt these points or you can modify the points for your industry. So this is the reference number, the issued to, date, organization, department, location, identifications. All these things are near about common. Then hazards existing before work start and introduced by the worker. So can work at height be avoided? If yes, then there is no need to go for this permit. If it is no, we can't avoid that work, then we have to go for this checklist. So are these surfaces are fragile? Then if it is yes, then we have to take care some other issues. So means of access may be from the scaffold state type, then independent type, tower, easy deck, then mobile elevated working platform, authorized operators, then ladders, step ladders, roof ladders, crawl boards, etc. So depending on the condition, again we have to tick that box whether what exactly you are going to use for the means of access. Then for fall protection, what you are going to use, that should be checked. So that is, that may be the guardrails, edge protections, lanyards, fall arrest harness, then permanent attachment, safety nets, boardings, bags, ladders secured, that may be tied or footed, etc. Or if any specific equipment is there for fall protections, because nowadays the new sophisticated equipments are also there with the spring loading mechanism, with some digital mechanism, with sensor mechanism, etc. So that can be mentioned in the other section also. Then falling objects may be a fully boarded platform, a tow board, then guard, brick nets, then equipment lanyards, west chutes or similars, or some others. So all these points should be checked, or if it is not in listed in these points, then you can add in the other. So this access equipment inspection should be done, and that may be for the scaffolding, that may be for the ladders, that may be for the step ladders. So whether all these equipments are in a good condition or not, if is there any crack, if is there any chances of cracks, or if the strength of that ladder or step ladder or scaffolding is not sufficient, or the railing height or the toe boards or the wheels are in not proper condition, then we have to check, we have to inspect, and we have to replace that part, or we have to replace that equipment for the access. So unauthorized people, the people who are not permitted for this work, that should be mentioned. So all these work area must have some displays, some signboards, signages regarding this work permit systems, their hazards and the precautionary measures. So unauthorized peoples are not going to enter in that area where this working at height or on the roof is going on. So these are some other systems which may have these types of symbols also, so that from the symbols worker can easily identify what exactly here it is asked and what should be done. So the following protective equipment must be one who used available, that may be a head protection, eyes protection, hand protection, feet protection, hearing protection, body protection, breathing apparatus, face shields, then harness, rescue, first aid, radio, etc. So all these signs, all these symbols should be known to each and every person who is going to work in that activity. So that may be the parameters like duration of permit, then valid between this time and this time, then issue of permit, again the declaration as it is discussed in the previous formats, then who is going to accept that permit, who is going to issue that permit, then the name of that person's date signing, etc. And then again the declaration and verification by the concerned people or the expert person. So if the work is completed, then we can close this work permit. If there is any issues, if there is accident, if there are chances of accident, if there is different hazards, what we have, if there is different hazards, what we have expected or not expected, then you can cancel that work permit, you can suspend that work permit, and what exactly the reasons of that cancellation or suspension of work permit, that should be mentioned by the concerned person, and the name, sign and date of the concerned person should be also mentioned for the cancellation, suspension or the closure or the clearance of that work permits. So these are the different work permit systems. So work permit systems, their importance, their formats that may be known to you now, and what exactly the conditions and where to apply, what exactly the parameters should be involved in the work permit formats, who are the responsible person, who may be the issuer, who may be the receiver, and what should be done, what should not be done. So all these things are under the work permit systems. Thank you.